Hi, I'm Signal SCV Deputy Managing Editor Perry Smith, here with Executive Editor Jason Schaff, Signal Business Editor Steve Kiggins, and Political Reporter Crystal Dwan. Congressman Steve Knight, welcome to our Signal Editorial Board meeting.
Thanks for having me.
We're creating these informal conversations with the candidates for the 25th Congressional District so we can have an open-ended discussion on the issues that matter most to our audience. Some of the questions came from our discussion, others from social media from your constituents, and we know we're not going to get to all the issues, but we want to touch on some of the ones that we hear about the most. So let's start with let's start with an easy one. What's the number one takeaway you want voters to have about Steve Knight and his record in Congress?
Oh, well, I'm the local guy. I'm the local congressman. We work on the local issues. We talk to the folks. We do an awful lot of roundtables and meetings, and we reach out to people, and I'm here. I did 70 trips cross country last year, so I'm always in the district as much as I possibly can. And we work on the local issues, from CMEX to veterans to bringing more women's centers and things like that. So I think that that's what people will take away from me, and I hope that that's what we portray.
Actually, and this is going to be just really a conversation.
Sure.
Some of your critics say that you're detached and you're reticent to have town halls and things like that. Tell us where you are. Are you going to have town halls at all? Or?
Yeah, so we've done 3 town halls. They were very difficult. We would get groups from outside of our district that would come in, and they would tear down the town hall completely. We had a lot of people that came after the town hall was over and said, I didn't get anything from that. So we've done 18 teletown halls where we reach out and we call about 15,000 people, and we keep them on the line for an hour and we talk about the issues. The town halls I'm absolutely fine with. When I was in the Senate, we did tons of them, but they've got to be directed right to the district and the district folks. So I think that maybe the next town hall we would just say just district people and no bussing people in.
How do you control that?
I don't know. Some other people have. Some other congressional members have. You've got to show an ID with your driver's license. With your address on it.
I guess whatever.
We didn't do that, so.
Yeah. All right.
So how would you respond to, accusations that it's hard for constituents to reach you?
Yeah, I don't know how I would respond to that, because I just don't see that happening. We have, I counted up a couple weeks ago, and it's almost every week that we have about 500 pieces of casework working in a week. That's an awful lot of people reaching out to us reaching out to them. We have 3 offices. I made that very clear that we were going to have an office in each distinct valley so that people could have the ability to talk to us. I give out my cell phone. You've probably run it in the Signal. It's been on the radio, it's been on TV. People have a lot of ability to reach out to me. So, I don't know. The detractors, I think, are always looking for something.
Yeah, so in light of yesterday's shooting and a school shooting that recently happened in the 25th Congressional District in the Antelope Valley, training law enforcement and educators is very important. But all the measures are meant to mitigate the situations once they occur. What solutions do you have to stop them?
So we have a piece of legislation. It is moving forward. It's bringing money into the pot to do training and to do fortification of schools. I hate to use those words, but there's really no other way to look at it other than we're trying to make the schools tougher for bad people that want to come in and do harm. I've also talked to the school districts. We had a roundtable with superintendents and teachers from around the district. And, I told them, I said, look, if I was in the school district, the very first thing I would do, especially in high school, is I'd make it a 1-point entry. I know that would be hard on the students and it would be hard on the parents, but really, if you want to do one thing right off the bat, make a 1 entry, and you're probably going to have to put a metal detector there. So I don't know any other way to get around this or to make an effect right off the bat. But our piece of legislation is moving forward. It does talk about training for the schools, for law enforcement, and for fortification. And that means, self-locking doors. We have a lot of those here in Santa Clarita with some of the school districts where the teacher can hit a button, it locks the door, and it's it's a solid door. So, but the schools are, it's a tough issue, and the superintendents have even said the same thing. You know, if we're going to fortify schools, you're going to have to put billions and billions of dollars into this because of all the school districts. We have, I think, 1,100 school districts just here in California. So, you know, this is a very tough item, and I think the more people that work on it, the better. But our piece of legislation is, to me, the best way to go about it.
There's, what was it, is there a congressman that's getting criticized today because he says there's too many exits in that school yesterday, and or too many ways in and out, or something like that. I just glanced at it just a few moments ago.
Well, if a congressman says something, they're probably going to be criticized.
I don't know, it might have been,
So,
it might have been the governor or the mayor or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, it doesn't matter.
I don't know that anybody wouldn't think that less entry points would be the better way to go about this. So, but it's, you know, it's unfortunately the life we're living in right now, and we always say we hope this is the last one, but we've got to do something to the schools to make it very difficult to get on campus with a weapon.
Let's talk about, you know, gun control, and I think everybody knows where you stand, but just think about there's going to be one of these a week. There's been 18 since the beginning of January or something.
Sure.
I mean, it's gonna, the you know, the gun control advocates, it's just gonna get deafening. How are you gonna meander through that? I mean,
well, I don't know that I meander through. I am willing
well,
to.
Not meander, that's a wrong word. I mean.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean, but I am, you know, talking about the issues. I don't necessarily think that guns are the main issue. The main issue is either mental health, or we are not addressing the children when they're going through certain periods in their life, and we're not saying, you know, we should identify this and we should work with this child. So that's I think everybody believes that that's the first thing. Here in California, we passed I believe it was 64 for mental health. That money was rated 4 times to balance the budget. While I was up there, I voted against it every time, but everyone says we need more mental health money. Well, we did. We passed it as voters here in California, and the legislature in Sacramento rated that money. So I think if you're going to talk about the issue at hand, you've got to talk about the problem in the individual people first. Otherwise, you would be looking at the van sales, because we just had a person use a van to kill 15 people just a month ago. And I know some people will laugh at that and say, well, guns are the bigger issue. I'm not saying that guns aren't, but it is the person.
So how would you directly respond to constituents who are criticizing your NRA support and your co-sponsoring of the concealed carry bill? How would you directly talk to a constituent who had a lot of concerns about that?
Yeah, so we've talked to them many times. We haven't accepted any money from NRA in years. I think there's a billboard up in Santa Clarita, and there's one in the Yellow Valley. I don't know where the heck they got that number, but it's a big number. You know, the reciprocity kind of goes back to when I was in the assembly. I said, look, if you're going to get a concealable weapons permit, just tell us what we've got to do, and then they can do it, and then you give them the concealable weapons permit. Without that, in California, a lot of counties, you just cannot get a CCW. This is one of them. LA County is near impossible unless you are someone with a title in front of their name.
Let's talk a little on national debt. Why?
It's a good one.
Why is there so much of it, first of all? And are there some specific measures being looked at right now to remedy that? And if you were elected, you know, where would you fit into that conversation, and how would you want to be involved in helping to trim that number?
Well, you got to look at the totality of government. So right now, about 67% of our money that we spend from the government is mandatory spending. So that's Social Security, Medicare, payment on the debt. So you know, those have got to be looked at. Payment on the debt, obviously, we'd like that to go down. We'd like the debt to go down. But you've got to look at that. Government has come down in the last about 4 or 5 years on discretionary spending. But you've got to look at the totality of what we're doing in government. And we know that Social Security and Medicare are going to have funding problems in the future, in the near future, by the end of the 2020s. So we've got to look at those. We've got to look at the ages that you get Social Security. We've got to look at the amount you put into Social Security, and we've got to look at the tax issue of Social Security. Right now, I think it's capped at about $126,500. So if you make any more than that, you don't put any more money into Social Security. And we've done that for years, for the last 60 or 70 years with these to keep them going. So the first thing I would say is if you are on Social Security today or you are going to reach Social Security in the next 15 years, nothing would change. You would go on Social Security and there would be zero changes, Medicare zero changes. But every generation you've got to look. Every generation is living longer. Every generation is a little bit healthier, so they're working longer. So we've got to look at those things, and that's the only way we're going to manage to get the debt down, get our deficit down to zero, and be able to pay on the debt. You can't pay $1 on the debt until the deficit's zero.
So you're suggesting perhaps we look at raising the contributions for folks making over, certain six-figure salary
Yeah,
ranges?
absolutely. I think that's one of the issues that you've got to look at. You've got to, and every time people look at Social Security, they look at the three things: that, how much you put in, and how old you are when you get Social Security. So I think that people who say, well, you can't touch it at all, I agree. You shouldn't touch Social Security. You should make sure that it's viable for future generations, though.
What about raising the retirement age?
Well, we've done that several times. When Social Security started, the average retirement person was like 3 or 4 years of getting Social Security. So there was there was really no damage to it.
Everybody died before they were 70.
Right.
Especially the guys.
Right. So now, people will be on Social Security for 25 years. And so that's a big amount of money that's being paid out for 25 or 30 years. So you've always got to look at that. And look, my kid's generation right now is probably going to live 3-4 years older or longer than my generation. And so that's what you got to look at.
But what's the alternative? I mean, raising the age and all that stuff, but, other types of, savings plans that are, I don't know, government backed or something. What are some other options?
Well,
you really seriously got to look at.
Yeah, I think everybody should look at other options. If you're you got a 401k or a 457b available to you, I think you should be in that. If you can do a Roth IRA, I think you should do that. But a lot of people can't, and they're living paycheck to paycheck. And Social Security, when that's coming at 62 or 67, that's kind of their that's it. That's their retirement. That's all they could do. So we've got to make sure that that's viable and that's ready to go for every generation. But if you can go into the others, then you absolutely should.
Is there any other government encouraged plan that could work out that's not Social Security but something similar that's less?
Well, we've talked about raising Roth IRAs, continuing to raise those up, continuing to do something that you can build plans around a 401k, maybe not for just a business, but you can build a plan where individuals can kind of bind together. I think those are great ideas. I think that that's something that we can look at. But again, remember, Social Security is, if somebody is living on every last dime and they get to Social Security, it's got to be there for them. It absolutely has to be there for them. So if you can save more money and you're in better shape, then great. But a lot of folks can't.
Along those same lines, the reasoning you gave on your vote to repeal Obamacare, I believe, was that you cited grounds it's an unsustainable program. However, under most alternatives being seriously considered, the numbers indicate people are going to lose coverage if we change things. What needs to happen?
Well, I said it all along, even before we talked about changing the Affordable Care Act. I said that there's got to be new products and there's got to be more products available, kind of like the auto insurance. My auto insurance coverage might be way different than yours, and so on and so forth for everyone in the room, because there's probably 20 products out there, from just having liability to all the way up to, you've got everything, including a rental car. So there's got to be that competition that builds these products. And if you remember, many years ago, Walgreens, Walmart, and Target were all talking about putting a clinic system in each one of their stores. And if they would have done that, they would have covered 98% of the country with a clinic system that nobody would have had to travel more than about 20 miles. So I think that that's a good thing. You've got to bring in the private industry and show them that there is a better way. Now, we have done that to some small extent. On April 9th, we started our new program, and it lets veterans go into urgent care clinics and get care. This is the first place in the country that this happens, right here in this district. We started that. We worked with the VA. We said it's silly that a vet has to go to a VA clinic or a VA hospital. You've got urgent cares in all of the cities. Why not do that? So that's what we have built. And this is the first of its kind. So we are not just, a potted plant. We are actually doing something that is working.
Okay, switching gears. I think at least one of your opponents calls you a Trump rubber stamp. And I think it's safe to say that President Trump can be polarizing and, controversial. I mean, you don't ever come off as an extremist, I don't think. I mean, as far as polarizing by your demeanor.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Your voting record, though, shows a very high correlation with the president. Explain to us where you and President Trump are similar and different.
In terms of policy.
In terms of policy.
Well, let me just kind of put it in how it happens when a new president comes in. You've got a new president with a different party, so you get CRAs. CRAs basically gets to pull back regulations from the previous administration. And that's what happened. And a lot of these CRAs have been put into place, and yes, I voted for them because I thought the previous administration had gone too far on some of these regulations. I think if you went back when President Obama was elected in 2009, went in and look at his CRAs and the Democrats, I'm sure it's at the 99 or 100% that they voted for him. That's how it is, and I'm sure with President Bush it was the same. We differ quite a bit, and I think we've been vocal about that. I just signed a petition order to get a vote on immigration. I am one of, I believe I'm 20 Republicans right now. I'm taking a whole lot of guff over that. Some people think I'm voting for amnesty, but the fact of the matter is all we're asking for is a vote on immigration. I think the president has tried to do some immigration work, but they've just kind of fallen a little short. So this is a push to actually do it.
When you say vote on immigration, can you clarify what aspect of immigration?
Yeah, so I believe in two things right off the bat because I think we can get them done. I think DACA we can get done to have a legal, not a pathway to citizenship, a legal residency here for DACA, and some border security. I think that both have agreed. The Democrats' leadership agreed on that. The Republican leadership agreed on that. Let's do it and get it done. Then you can look at other things. You can look at TPS. You can look at all kinds of other immigration issues. But President Trump and I have differed on many, many issues, and we've been very, very vocal about that. And I think that some people think, well, Knight's not out there yelling and screaming, or he's not on Fox or MSNBC, so we don't know what he's thinking. But the fact is, we have put out on our Facebook page and our page many, many times when we think the president has gone in a bad direction. And so,
but people have cited your voting record as maybe not necessarily reconciling with that reality. So how would you respond to that?
yeah, so I would go back and say, remember, the president doesn't write laws. We write laws. So if the president has come forward with a CRA that is pulling back on a regulation, then yeah, we agree on that. So I don't, and again, I think either you or someone else talked to me about the voting record. I'd have to see where they're looking at a voting record to see how we're together. Because remember, the president doesn't write laws. We write laws. We vote in Congress on laws. So I just need a little more information on that.
What's the biggest policy area where you differ?
With President Trump and I?
Yeah.
Well, I would say that we differ quite a bit on policy here in California. We differ on immigration quite a bit. He has his executive orders and things have come out. They've been very hard on immigration. They've been pushing immigration kind of raids and controls and things like that. I think it should be way more through Congress that we can get an immigration policy. So I think he's pulled back a little bit, but he came out of the gates in the first 6 months like gangbusters, and we were very vocal about that.
How about the wall? Is it ever going to get built?
Well, you know what? I say border security because I'm a cop, and there's so much drugs and crime that comes over the border and comes back and forth. I don't know that you can not say that we don't need more border security. I just don't. Whether it's more boots on the ground there, whether it's fortifying some of the wall or fencing area, whether it's new technologies, something. But remember, there's 3 drug cartels in Mexico, and they're sending over cocaine every minute of every day.
But it doesn't necessarily have to be on a physical wall.
No, if we can use new technologies, we've used it over in Afghanistan. We've brought some of that over here. If we can stop the drugs and if we can stop the crime, great. And the people that are coming over into our country, and they're, they want to stay here. Obviously, there's got to be security there to say, look, this is a sovereign nation. There is a stop here.
Entry point.
So let's talk SB 54 then. The Santa Clarita City Council, of course, recently made national news really with that, and one of our councilmen, Bob Keller, was on a couple of different programs on Fox News talking about that. Obviously, it's an important issue. It's also a divisive issue. Where does the state's position present any sort of conflict for you as a federal legislator?
So it puts us in a difficult position. The governor came out about a year or a little more ago and came to one of our lunches, and I sat down with him and I said, look, I hope you don't sign this sanctuary state because it puts us in a difficult situation. There's 49 other states that don't understand what's happening out in California. So when we go into appropriations and we start going into do the things that we need to do, they're looking at California and saying, well, you're thumbing your nose at our laws, so why would we vote to help out California? I think it's a bad way to go about this. Remember, the cities have been doing it in California. The major cities from San Francisco to San Jose all the way down LA and San Diego have all been sanctuary cities. They have been doing that and nobody has been saying anything. They have been setting their own policies, they've been doing their own thing. So I don't think that being a sanctuary state is the right thing to do. I think that leave it up to the cities, let the cities decide how they want to go about this. I do believe that the cities should follow federal law, I do, but as we've seen with other laws like marijuana, you don't necessarily have to follow federal law. You can vote and do your own thing. So I think that was a much better way of going about it.
You think the lawsuit's going to succeed? The lawsuit against California?
I don't know enough about it to say what's going to happen or what's not going to happen, but I do think it gets people to see what's happening here in California and to say, I don't really like that. And some people will say, I really like having a sanctuary state. So I do think it's energizing the population to either vote, be involved, or something. So
you're okay with maybe not agreeing with California taking a federal stance on this issue, but you're okay with certain cities doing that out of necessity to protect their citizens' safety if they feel like that's what they need to do?
Well, look, when I was on city council, we were not a sanctuary city. So, we would not have had a sanctuary city. It didn't fit us. It didn't fit, I believe, our law enforcement goals. So we would not have done that. But other cities have done it, and there hasn't been that much controversy or problems with it. So to take it one step further, or actually, it's almost like 5 steps further by making it a sanctuary state, you are stamping the state as this, and I don't think that's the right way to go.
Now, of course, your law enforcement, knowing that so many immigrants are undocumented, doesn't it make the streets safer to a degree if these residents don't feel threatened or scared to interact with local law enforcement?
Yeah, so I absolutely. I think that if you're going to be in an area and there's a crime, you want to be able to talk to everyone. You want to be able to talk to witnesses and things like that. And I can tell you, I was with the biggest police department in California, the best police department, and that was something that we always, wanted, was we wanted people to come forward and say, yeah, I saw this, I saw that, and get those types of open statements. So yeah, I want people to be okay here, but also remember, if you came into the country illegally, you did break a law, and we've got to figure this out. We've got to do something with immigration. I think that that's what's so important about what I did with the petition order. I'm asking for a vote. I'm not asking for anything else, but let's get a vote on something. Or in 30 years, the person who's in this chair and you, Steve, are going to be talking about the same thing. So I do believe the government is about getting something done.
This might feel really frustrating in Washington.
Some days. Some days.
Well, what's some of the takeaways from your trip to Israel recently?
It was an electric feeling over there. The country was in a buzz. I think that the people who reported what was happening at Gaza Strip reported incorrectly. The Hamas terrorist organization that controls the Gaza Strip, the 1.9 million people there, have been saying that they're going to do these types of things. They use their people. They have a $500 bounty for everyone who gets injured by an Israeli soldier. So I think that they detracted from what was really the most important thing, and that's getting the embassy in Jerusalem, getting the embassy near the Knesset, which is the legislative branch, getting it near the Prime Minister, getting it near the Supreme Court, getting it near everything that's happening in Israel. And yes, I do think that recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel is a very, very important thing.
In that vein, President Trump has kind of taken, at times, non-traditional approaches to diplomacy. And sometimes...
That's an understatement.
Yeah, and sometimes changes his mind and things, but what's your read on President Trump? Is his diplomacy working?
So, well, first I would say that, we want him to be more focused on what we're trying to get done. But to that end, 9 months ago, if I was sitting in here, we would all be talking about a possibility of being at war with North Korea at any moment. So I think that you've got to at least take some of the things that President Trump has done, and maybe they're, a little bit out of the box, but we're going to be meeting with KJU. We are going to be talking about how the peninsula can be a nuclear-free zone and a place where we might not have the problems that we've had over the last 50 years. Now, it might not happen, but we're getting a lot closer than we ever have been. So I think that, yes, he is a outspoken person. I think that he doesn't necessarily do all the things that I like on diplomacy, but we're very close on some of these issues. And so I'm very hopeful. And like I said, 9 months ago, I wouldn't have been hopeful. I would have said, absolutely every day I get up thinking, did something happen on the peninsula?
Right. You mentioned that you thought he needed to be a little bit more focused. I mean, what do you mean by that?
Well, his tweets, and I think that that's a big part of a lot of us out there that think, if we're getting a success with North Korea, don't rock the success by a bad tweet. So, and when I go into armed services, the Democrats in armed services will always pull out a tweet from the president and say, well, the president said this. How do you respond to this? So just, keep moving down the road on the same vein. I'm not asking him to be, as maybe cordial as I am when I'm on Twitter, but you know,
So
a little better.
So what do you think then is needed to solve or at least successfully navigate the longstanding problems such as tensions in the Middle East or elsewhere?
Well, the Middle East is a very difficult spot right now. You know, I can just run around the countries. Syria is a spot where, you know, obviously the Russians are looking for a tactical advantage there. Obviously, the trade routes that come through Syria are very, very important. And the connection to Iraq and Iran and then coming down to Jordan and Israel and keep going down the Med, it's a very, very volatile spot. So our connection over there, we have to be good allies. We have to be good friends. And sometimes it's not easy when some of our friends are Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Egypt. They're difficult at times, but we've got to make sure that we have a good presence there and we are a friend and that we're moving forward, because anytime something could outbreak out there and we would have to be firmly involved.
Net neutrality,
Yeah.
which you are for,
Mm-hmm.
and the Senate voted to reverse the FCC ruling the other day, but it's seen as sort of, I don't want to say symbolic, but everybody's saying that's not going to happen in the House. What's your read on it? And you know, are you going to?
I think that's very difficult in the House. You know, I live in a world of how many votes do you have? I don't live in a world of I can say whatever I want and, you know, who cares? I do live in a world where you got to have the votes. I don't think they have the votes for that. I think that we should be going down a net neutrality correction. There are some bills in the House right now. Mike Kaufman from Colorado's got the 21st Century Act, I believe. And I think that's probably the best way of navigating this. But, you know, I think education is also an important part of net neutrality too. A lot of people talk to me about net neutrality and they don't know what it is, but it sounds good. So nobody wants you to be able to throttle somebody out of an arena. Nobody wants your small business to get knocked down and the big guy get kind of an advantage there. So I'm for net neutrality. I think that we can get there, but there's a lot of people in the House that just don't want to do that.
Before we start running out of time, what's your number one goal legislatively, or maybe not legislatively, to help Santa Clarita out in the next 2 years if you're reelected?
So CMEX is still our top priority. I think that, you know, in my first year in office, we got a 180-degree turn in the contracts. This last year, we got a piece of legislation that passed and is law. First time in the last 24 years that's happened. So we're continuing to move the ball down the road, and I think that we're getting to a spot where CMEX is not going to mind. Secondly, you know, we look at what we do for veterans. We want to expand our veteran program. We think that that's going to be a roadmap for the rest of the country. We think that the more urgent cares that come online, the better, and the better it is for the veterans. And then third, and I'll kind of put a point on this, we do have to finish St. Francis Dam. It's been that thing that I thought would be so simple, and it's been one of those difficult things.
And why? I mean,
I have no idea. You'd have to talk to a senator and just ask them why this is a tough thing to do. Because we finally got Senator Harris to kind of move and help us a little bit, but very little.
In line with talking about the dam and natural things, what's the number one environmental concern you have right now?
Well, you know, if you've seen two of my latest bills, we've got the Audubon Society on our bills. And this is one of the things that we disagree with President Trump. It was on tariffs, and we did a bill for solar, and kind of pushing back on what he thought on tariffs. We pushed directly back on that. We've got a bill out there that corrects that. Audubon Society came on board. I don't know that I ever thought that would ever happen. So I think that you can take that as kind of an environmental win, but I will go back to CMEX and Whitaker Burmite. working on the issues there, working on Santa Susana.
So our last question is a bit of an easier one, but we've been asking this of everybody. What is your favorite restaurant in the Santa Clarita Valley? And
Chi-Chi's?
No hesitation.
Wow.
Nope.
And is there a particular
Yes.
dish reason?
The all-you-can-eat pasta. They have a knack of pulling the pasta out at the perfect time every time. Never had a bad meal.
Says the skinny guy, talking about pasta, wow.
Well, Congressman Knight, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.